Hello, and welcome to our presentation on formal and informal, cultural, responsive, and accessible assessments. Let's start off by looking at evaluation versus assessment. Evaluation determines the level of quality and enables decision-making after data is analyzed. Assessment: feedback is provided to improve knowledge, skills, and product to improve future performances and learning of outcomes. Similarities: specified criteria, collected data, result and report of findings, and require a performer and an administrator. We often look at evaluation as kind of the end game, where we want to be, and then assessment is the process that kind of gets us there. So we're able to look at our skills, rebuild on them. If there's deficits, we can go back and address them. And then evaluation is just going to be ultimately where we want to end up. Measures of formative and summative assessments. Formative: extended amount of learning tested. Feedback given to understand strengths and weaknesses of student learning. Includes coursework. We're worried about how the results occur. And then it's standard-based. Really focus on student learning on formative assessments, where we look at the process that students are using to learn the information that we want them to go see. And then if they're struggling, we can always go back and reteach or look at why they aren't learning the way we want them to. Summative: it's going to be at the end of the course, primarily concerned with learning outcomes, and then we're going to use that data to address student achievement. No student reflection or improvement will happen after this. So this is kind of like where we look at the data and basically are going to judge whether we met the outcomes and met the standards that we're looking for. Effective versus ineffective assessment. Effective assessments can involve critical thinking, writing, depth of knowledge and material, and then communicating ideas. Ineffective assessments: all multiple choice and true and false, a very narrow scope of knowledge, and then overly weighted testing. When we're looking at effective assessments, we want kids to think very in-depth about the knowledge. When we think back of ineffective assessments, we're looking at those ones that kids can cram the night before and just kind of reiterate material that was given back to them. Where effective assessments goes beyond that and uses the known material to create new ideas, express those in communicating, whether it's writing, verbally, or through a presentation. And then we're going to look, is our school right now testing for well-being? Are we using the 7 Mindsets program appropriately? Are we testing through SABRs and then judging or having students give us feedback on their current social emotional state? Cultural responses and accessible assessments. Cultural responsive, let's look at this first. We're going to use cultural strengths and curiosities. Cultural responsive rubrics: we're going to connect learning with daily experiences. We're going to collaborate with community, parents, and families. We're going to use personal experiences to build relationships and commonalities. Relationships and commonalities, that's the big thing we're going to key on. We're going to look at finding ways to connect to our students, whether it's similarities in our personalities, whether it's past experiences we can both relate to, or just finding ways to get kids involved and interested in the subjects we're teaching. You got to find that connection. And then accessible assessments. We're going to follow IEPs that are approved by accommodations. We're going to alternate means of information. We're going to give flexible location, organization of time, material, and then we're going to utilize technology. Big thing with accessible assessments, we got to be flexible, whether that's different uses of technology, whether that's different ways we are giving the information to them, whether it's read out loud, but making sure that they understand the assessments within the scope of their individual education program. Coordinating assessments. It all starts with a strong curriculum. That's number one. We are then going to align that curriculum with state standards. We're going to make sure that learning outcomes are identified that follow along with those standards. we're going to pre-test. This is maybe one of the most important things, to see where our current students are currently at and where their deficits may lie. Number 5, we're going to give formative assessments to provide growth and student learning. This is where we can give feedback and give that opportunity for correction and reteaching. Number 7, we're going to give the summative assessments, where we look and see if all the formative assessments have added up to that goal of getting the student achievement where we want. And that's going to come into state testing, where we're going to look and see if our kids are meeting those benchmarks, if they're in those higher levels of 3 and 4 that the state wants to see. Where are we currently? Do we have a curriculum in place? As far as I've been tenured at Hayes Middle School, I've not seen a curriculum for a subject. It's never been brought up. It's never been discussed. There is a curriculum that I found, but it's old, outdated, and right now we're not currently using one. Are we using standardized assessments, norm reference? Right now we're using FastBridge, state testing, and SABRES that are all standardized and norm referenced. FastBridge we're going to use for reading and math. State testing, very norm-based. We're looking where our students may fall within those 4 levels. And then SABRES is going to be the social-emotional part of testing, where we're checking on our students' well-being, whether it's self-tested, so they'll do a self-test part, or we'll also look at the teacher testing portion, where the teachers take the same test on the students, and then we kind of match those results up and compare them to see where they're at compared to each other. Formative and summative assessments. Yes, we are going to look at resources like textbooks, digital textbooks, digital programming, like big ideas that were used for math. All of those different things add up and help us align with our standards and our outcomes. Do we have a district assessment plan? We do for the summative assessments of state testings for FastBridge and SABRES. Right now, we don't have any formative assessment plans, which we'll look at definitely adding one of those in. Are we looking at assessment results? Yes, we are. For the 3 that I mentioned of FastBridge, state testing, and SABRES, we do look at those. Things we've made modifications for is there was a gap in math where we were below the level we wanted to be, so we added extra math programming in, and then we specified with certain students where they were really struggling in certain areas and put them in academic seminars to help them in the areas they were struggling in. Our assessments currently culturally responsive, very much so in the formative assessments. Many teachers use subject-based projects to assess where students they use project-based assessments that allow students to pick their own subject areas and then are able to relate that back to their past experiences and express themselves. Where do we go from here? We're going to look at a 5-step approach. First, we're going to look at rewriting our curriculum to meet our needs. This is going to include units by subjects, grade levels. We're going to get teachers involved. We're going to use this as a teacher learning opportunity on an in-service day, where teachers are going to come in and kind of create their own curriculum that matches those standards that we need. We're going to develop an assessment plan. Right now, like I said, we have one in place for the standardized testing, but we're going to include formative assessments in the schedule also. We're going to give teachers an opportunity to reflect and then reteach if they need to. Number 3, we're going to clarify data and analysis schedule. So we're going to give time for teachers to look at the data from the formative assessments, standardized testing, and summative assessments, and then give them an opportunity to make improvements based on that data. The one area we're really missing right now is we're doing a good job of testing for social emotional learning, but right now I don't feel like we're doing a lot to help those students get the support that they need. We're able to identify them, but right now we need support It could be anything from personal wellness of hygiene, mental health, etc., to find those gaps that the students need almost just to meet their basic needs. And then number 5, we're going to identify resources we need and are underutilized. So digital learning opportunities could be digital programming. We definitely have a gap in our English second language learner staffing. We don't currently have a staff member that is bilingual. And then we're going to look at outside sources, different things in our community that we could bring in to help. References. Thank you for your time.